I'm Mackayla. Welcome to the Soundtrack of Our Lives podcast. We're going to jump right in with the two hardest questions of all. Who are you and what have you been up to recently?
Wow.
They are hard
Who am
questions.
I? Oh my God. I don't get asked that question much. No, I do. My name is Myles Wakeham. I am a recording engineer and producer at a recording studio in the center of Mexico called Troubled Clef Studios. And what we do here and what I've been up to recently is we record things. My background was I was a Hollywood engineer through the 90s. And that's what I did there. I recorded things, music, movies, films, TV stuff. And we saw our industry kind of die and eventually come back to life here south of the border, which is our goal. So we spent 4 years building this massive recording studio where I am right now. And that's who I am. And that's what I've been doing, I guess.
You've been busy.
Busy is an understatement. Yeah.
What do you miss most about that so-called like the golden era of recording?
There's a lot I do miss. There's a lot I don't. To kind of put that in context, like where I came from. So I'm originally from Australia. So I grew up there, and my parents were classical pianists. So I grew up in orchestra. I was taught to play the violin from the age of 5, and I was in the junior symphony at the age of 11. And that was the expectation that my parents had because they'd gone through similar artistic,
Yeah.
career, I guess. But if you ever learning classical training and classical music and orchestra at a very young age, it's fraught with very, very, very overt, disciplined teachers and almost, for lack of a better term, a Russian level of training. And when I got to the age of 12, 13, like most young adolescent boys, I rebelled and I became Mr. Punk Rock musician and did everything that my parents told me not to do, and then forged a bit of an interest in technology and electronics and computers and software and all of those things, thinking that I could make my money doing that, but my real passion was going out there and creating mosh pits and all of that stuff. And so that was what I thought my life was going to be, and I did not expect to end up in Hollywood, but through a weird series of events, I ended up in Los Angeles. I ended up getting married, and I was stuck in this weird immigration quagmire where I couldn't go back to Australia. I was 25 at the time. So I couldn't go back to Australia because they wouldn't let me. That would cancel my immigration process. But I couldn't work because that would cancel my immigration process. So my new wife had a job, so she'd go off to work, and I'd sit around in this apartment in LA doing nothing. And anyway, I ended up wandering around the streets of Ventura Boulevard in Hollywood and hanging out too much in guitar stores and reading signs like band members wanted on something, and managed to cobble enough money together to buy a decent guitar and an amp. And so I went back into being in a band and did that somewhat successfully, I guess, for a while I was waiting for this immigration thing to happen. And then the band did very well, and we were having meetings with record labels, and they were going to give us record deals and all this sort of stuff. And then the band split up because one of the members couldn't handle the stress, and I was still at this like, well, now what? We'd been playing at all these epic clubs up and down the Sunset Strip and hanging out with all the, so-called famous people at the time. And then one of the producers who was going to produce our album, I became good friends with. And it just so happened we were at a time around about 1990 when all the recording studios were all these analog studios. They had these big consoles, kind of like what this is. And they had no idea what computers were. And here's this guy who can't work, who's sort of stuck in this immigration quagmire. But he knows computers, and he also is a pretty good musician, so maybe we could sort of leverage him to help us learn about how that was going to work in studios, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I did, but I couldn't take money because I couldn't work. So I said, well, in lieu of that, maybe you guys could teach me about how recording studios work, right? How big recording consoles and all that stuff works. So I did that, and I worked worked for them to help them transition, but in these epic big recording studios. And I'd be, it's funny, I'd be in studios at nighttime helping these guys out with networks and how to set up DAWs, which they didn't even call them that back in the day. And the guy in the room recording next to me was Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, right? And it's like, okay, this is surreal. And then I'd go into other studios and it would, it's the same story all the time. And you'd meet these guys in the corridor and you have a conversation, and you were like, I realized I had something to offer here. I was like a value. But in a world where it was kind of cool, because I realized, I guess, later on in life that, if you study psychology, the human brain has like two hemispheres, has like a left and a right hemisphere. Yeah. And I guess they equate, I guess neuroscientists or whatever, equate that the left hemisphere is our technical and mathematic and problem solving and logical side. And the right hemisphere is our feeling and warmth and art and emotion and all that stuff, right? And those two things have to they have to live in balance. You have to be able to have control of both. When they get out of balance, they're kind of like the magnetic poles of the planet, the north and the south. And then if they're out of balance, things just spin off out of control, which is part of the reason why we have such a mental health crisis. But I realized that in a recording studio, you had one side of the room that was technical, the engineering side. And then you had this bit of glass. And then on the other side of the glass was where the artists would live, and that's where the music was made. And it was the one place I could find solace, right? It was like my mother and her intention for me to become, a classical virtuoso was one side, and my need for logic and pragmatic thinking and engineering and all of that was the other side. And if I could live between the two sides, I could be at peace. Yeah. And recording studios offered me that, and that's how I fell into it. And the rest of it is just what we did in them. And that continues to this day.
Yeah. What do you miss most from that time period?
The humanity, right? I mean, I miss building relationships with artists that were more than transactional. Where they were attempting to create something important in their life. Yeah. And yet there was this crew of people around them who had really no business being in the studio or anywhere around them, the lawyers and the management people and all this stuff, who all just got in the way. And then you realize that you're the gatekeeper or you're the facilitator between them having a wonderful idea that they've formed with their band in a rehearsal space or in a loft or whatever. Yeah. And you're the ability for them to be able to capture it in perpetuity, and then for that to be able to scale where it can reach the world, and it can really help them achieve their goal, and that is to impact people in a meaningful way with their art. And you're the gatekeeper of that. I mean, what an honor, what a responsibility. And you have your own fears and your own reservations about whether you're up to the task and you can do it, but so do they. And all of a sudden you start realizing, we're kind of one and the same, right? Yeah. I know your job is, it takes a lot of courage to go into a studio and expose your soul. And for somebody to be there who can give you a safe place and can appreciate and understand that, because you've been there too. That's important. Today, what do I miss most? I miss that collaborative process that happens. Today, we live in a world of isolation. Everyone's got a laptop. Yeah. They go out and they buy a couple of $100 interface and a microphone, and the next thing they're Billie Eilish, right? And that's okay. There's a market for that. But it creates this isolationism that talks to the very reasons why people need that sort of validation, the anxiety, the depression, the fear of socialization, that people don't date, without an app. I mean, these things are like, we're social beings, and we're willing to sell that out to a machine, to a simplification for the purpose of convenience. And we forget that art is struggle, art is hard, art is effort, and that art is fear, and it takes a lot of courage to be able to participate in that.
Yeah.
And it's not about, buying a sample library and sticking it on there and playing beats all day. I mean, there is a market for that, don't get me wrong. But the true art that seems to have longevity, that is, per the name of your podcast, the soundtrack of our lives, that art is about humans feeling emotion and getting goosebumps, and that can only happen when the artist has something really good to offer, and they're in an environment in which we can take that and make it transform or transfer to the 8 billion people on our planet. And I still am a very strong believer that music and recording studios represent an important process of almost like quality control, because without it, anybody can do anything. And the most noticeable thing that I'm seeing is the repetition, that things are basically just a version, a mimic of something else that was already there before it. And I think that there's a room for people to want to have the courage to think completely out of the box and do something entirely different.
Yeah.
And that's what I miss. The 90s was all about going big, right? It was about, I can be louder, I can be more outrageous, I can be more extreme. And that's where you get like Rage Against the Machine and Tool. And I was so lucky to work with these guys. And to see that willingness to be like, oh, just kick it up a notch. Like, let's level up. Let's just keep going, And then I don't see that much these days. I mean, if I do see it, it seems like a mimic of what was there before. So that's kind of what I miss.
Do you think the industry is going to take a turn back towards that? Or what do you think is going to happen?
I absolutely do. Absolutely do. We had an intern working with us who was spent the last 2 years in Abbey Road in London. And she was working in here with me for a couple of months, and we were talking about that very thing. And I was pretty much saying, what are you seeing on the streets of Camden or the streets of London right now? Because typically the UK has always been a kind of a beta test.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that we typically find that's on Billboard now was floating around there 2 years ago. It was kind of like being validated there.
Right.
So I asked her, what do you really see? And she was telling me there's a movement away from, Ableton Live and a laptop into old stuff like shoegazing and punk rock and hardcore and that sort of thing. And I'm like, wow, that's where I lived for a long time. Maybe that's coming back. Maybe it's coming back in a way that we won't expect it to. This is cyclic, by the way. This is not unusual.
Yeah.
In the 1970s, the early 70s was a reaction to the technology that had come out in the late 60s, particularly in the studio business, and was mainly used by, the Beatles, the Stones, these sort of things, where they had multi-track recording and much more sort of scientific approach to recording.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, artists that came out, Bowie, Genesis, Yes, these sort of artists, they would take the access to that technology and try to make it part of their process. And the biggest way that they could market their material, other than making records and some television and so on, was stadiums. So you got this sort of prog rock era with the stadiums that were filled with 100,000, fans, and things turned into laser light shows, and technology became overt. It became really important part, and the humanity of the music kind of started to retreat. And little by little, what we saw leading up to the mid-70s was this kind of scientific engineering of music that had in the past been something played in a dance hall or in a club or a pub or whatever.
Yeah.
And the audience, particularly in the UK, rebelled against that, which is why we got the Sex Pistols and why we got the Clash and the Jam and bands like that that came out of the aftermath of that reaction. Like, these people are not telling the stories of what it's like to work in the coal mine, or, you know,
Yeah.
they're not telling that story. We're going to tell the story of the soundtrack of that period, right? How gritty and grimy and dirty and aggressive and all of that it was, which is where punk rock came from. And so that era sort of reached its heyday in the late 70s, early 80s, and it kind of flowed over into the early to mid 80s, but then the technology came back again, and it came back with synthesizers and, you know, and all of a sudden now this fusion between punk rock and synth music, like bands like New Order, Joy Division, these sort of bands came out. They represented that fusion. And again, what happened? That technology went off and became, you know, orchestral maneuvers in the dark and all that stuff. Soft Cell, these sort of bands, Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, so on. They went into that synth-only market, and the reaction of that was in LA, you had this glam rock movement sort of coming together. And then finally, we get a rebellion against that, and it's called grunge. And what was it? Flannel shirts and people living in nine months of rainfall in Seattle, where they're all inside feeling suicidal about their lives, and turning it into Nirvana, Pearl Jam, you know, and so on. And that changed the narrative, and it changed a lot. And then the 90s, the early to mid 90s, took that and amped it up, wanted to be louder, wanted to be bigger. And that then eventually turned into industrial, goth, through to that sort of music. And gradually, the technology, as it became more available, more affordable, and laptops became more portable, then became the DAWs and the sample libraries. And it hasn't changed much in 20 years. So after that period, what would be the natural reaction if you look cyclically at how this stuff, it has to be organic music. It has to be hardcore. It has to be, particularly right now, I mean, we're in a chaotic moment in time where we've got polarization, we've got people with a lack of hope. They feel they can't have a career or buy a house and all these things that were not factors of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Right.
And all of a sudden now it's like you've got every reason to scream, right?
Yeah.
And why aren't people changing this? Why are we so fearful? Well, we've been kind of pushed down and looking at our phones and worried that we don't matter or that we don't appear as good as somebody else on Insta or somebody else on Facebook or whatever, or we don't have enough good dance videos on TikTok or whatever it is. If that's become the value system that we measure ourselves, there's a repression. And that repression can't be repressed for that long. And I think there's going to be an explosion. I mean, I think we're going to see a movement of humanity that makes punk rock look amateur and look weak.
It's going to be exciting.
And it will. It has to be, right? My God. And what's happening is that all we see, all we hear about is the, you know, AI. Everyone wants, you know, the computer's going to write the music and it's going to do all this. And it's like, no. I mean, artists create art because they want to express, right? They want to express their self. People who make that are not artists. They're shortcut merchants. They're looking for, you know, a text prompt does not denote the struggle that I want to convey in my art. It comes from me screaming and reaching out and delving deep into my soul. I mean, I'm sorry, that takes struggle, courage, all the things that
Yeah.
artists live with, and that's why our art will live on, because humans are not going away,
Hmm.
and we don't want to sit there and be devalued.
No.
And so I think that we're going to enter a renaissance period. When we see that, I can't tell you, but I'm sitting here in a big recording studio waiting for it to happen. So
Be exciting. I'm waiting. Yeah, I know. I can't wait for it to happen. Like the next wave of music.
yeah, absolutely. I just hope places like what we've got here are there to capture it, because I don't want it to be captured in the wrong form. It
Hmm.
needs to be real. I mean, yeah, we do a lot of live recording. We'll go out and do stuff in theaters and clubs, and then bring the stuff back here and mix it. But what I've seen, I'm so encouraged by what I've seen from the new generation of artists who were like I was in my 20s, that want to scream too, you
Hmm.
know, because they have every right to. And I want to give them a platform which is safe that they can do that.
Yeah. What advice would you give to an artist who is stepping into the recording studio for the first time?
Yeah, that's a good question, because this is a synthetic world we live in here. It's not the normal place that they're used to.
Hmm.
I would be cautious to anybody just walking into a studio thinking that they're going to walk out as the next Lady Gaga. They're
Hmm.
not. Those artists have spent years honing their craft in front of a live audience. And I would say to anybody who is contemplating coming into a studio that if you haven't been out there 3 nights a week or more in the clubs performing to people who don't know you,
Hmm.
who have no relationship with you, and they're not your loyal fan base, they're new fans, right? And
Yeah.
that typically means that you've, like for bands, you've all lived in a van and traveled, toured, and couch surfed your way to every stadium or every venue you could find. If you haven't done that first, it's very, very, very hard for me to be able to capture that authenticity.
Hmm.
I try to. I was recording yesterday a Grammy Award winning artist in here, and she has 20 odd years of experience out there
Hmm.
doing that. And it's really easy for me to put a mic up in front of her and to play the music her band has recorded
Yeah.
and watch her pour her soul out. And it's effortless to her, right? Because she's
Hmm.
done it 1,000 times all over the world. She's used to this. Come in, do it. I only need 2 or 3 takes, and I've got gold.
Hmm.
And that's ideal. For a new artist who's never been in that world before, I'm not saying you don't have any business walking into a recording studio to record your craft. You do. But hone it in front of real live human beings first. Get out there in the clubs, play it until you're sick and tired of those songs, right? Then bring them in here, and you know what? We can make a great record.
And on the reverse of that, what advice would you give to the recording engineer if it was their first time?
Um, don't rely on the tools to define what you do.
Hmm.
Rely on your ears, because you're going to, if you can, well, I don't think, I think there's room for everybody in this world in the engineering cycle. There's a lot of engineers who are not musicians. They went to school and they came out the other end, and somebody said, what do you want to do with your life? And they're like, well, I like music. Maybe I'll become an audio engineer. And they maybe, I mean, the world as it used to be in studios was very much an intern kind of mentorship
Hmm.
program, which is how I did it, right?
Yeah.
I think if you can fall into that, you'll get access to the right people to teach you the right way to think and the right
Hmm.
way to do things. Audio engineers are problem solvers, that's their main job. And they have to have the skills to be able to do that, and that means they have to be able to look at a kind of a archival plethora of stuff in their mind that tells them when they don't hear something they're expecting, what could that be and how do I solve it quickly.
Hmm.
Although you can learn a lot of that in formal education, the truth is that formal education, this is a craft, not a science.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of science we use, but it's in the same way that a great woodworker would know, maybe how to do engineering drawings and the mathematics of what they do, that doesn't denote a beautiful piece of furniture or a great sculpture.
Yeah.
And I think audio engineers need to understand that whereas we do rely on a lot of technique and technology and engineering prowess, the best thing you've got is these two organic ears on your head and your ability to sense what the artist is trying to convey. It's one thing to stick a microphone in them. It's another thing to tell them what to do. And they rely on us to do that. Fair enough. I mean, it's a hard job in here. And you've got to give them safe harbor. You've got to be able to understand that they're trying to capture something in their life that's monumental, and you're the shepherd trying to take the vision across, to the next farmyard. I mean, that's your job, and you need to shepherd it really well.
Any advice on how to, mentor or how to create that relationship with the artist?
Yeah, I mean, be one of them too. Like, go out. I think the best way to do it is go out there and do live sound, right? If they're out there on the stage, they get one shot to get it right, and you're out there as the live sound person, and you've got one shot to get it right too, like to make it sound good.
Yeah.
You'll develop a camaraderie and a respect, and don't expect it to happen day one. It won't. Artists don't look at sound people in the live sense with a lot of respect, because a lot of those live sound people were just phoning it in, and they're just there for a paycheck and they don't really want to do anything else. But if you can go the extra mile and help the artist do a better job in their live performance, they will embrace you and they will demand that you are their person when they do that big show or that big concert or that, and they'll bring you into a recording studio to help them if they don't have that relationship with the sound engineers in the studio. So it's a great way to be brought in and to find your way.
That's some great advice.
Yeah, I hope that I don't want to see our industry die, and I don't want to see it become another part of a school curriculum course, or that studios who are having a hard time filling their rooms with real work skew to selling educational courseware that at the end of the day doesn't help anybody. This is a person business. This is about, and it's fine if you want to be a part of this industry. We would love to have you for sure, but you've got to do the first step, and that's not watching YouTube videos and buying some equipment and calling yourself a sound engineer. It's about you reaching out to people who are already doing it and saying, "Can I help?" We have interns in here all day long, and they're going to walk out of here with careers in this industry, and we hope that that we do hope. The variable which I cannot deny, cannot predict or have any idea is more the audience.
Yeah.
If audiences are not willing to spend an hour listening to a Pink Floyd album, and I mean that's one example, right?
Yeah.
but where you have that quiet time where you connect with the music and the messaging and the story and the feeling, if you can do that, the artist will continue to make you records, right? But if everything is a 30-second quick, fast food mentality experience of consumption of art, the artists don't get the feedback loop they're used to having. And the problem is that the motivation for them to continue to do what they do is dropping all the time. And I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if your audience know this, but there are 120,000 new songs uploaded to Spotify every day. Every day. And now it's turned to 200,000 because 50% more are AI driven. So if you think in terms of to Spotify or Apple Music or these guys, to them, this is data. This is not music. These are ones and zeros on a network connection being pushed out of a data center somewhere. They're not in the business of hosting the best art, because when you pay $12.95 a month or whatever it is now, there's no incentive for them to have quality control on that. They just want to pump more data out, right? So the artist who's putting their music out on that form is being paid something like 0.003 cents a stream, and they're lucky to get a cup of coffee out of the cost that they may have invested $50,000 in recording this stuff, and they can't pay rent, and you're expecting them to front up and do it again and again and again. We as an audience have a responsibility to, well, support the artist, but also support the future of the artist by maybe not necessarily using a one-stop shopping experience of Spotify, but to go to the artist's website and to buy their product or their merch or their albums, or maybe get a CD player and go back to CDs, because artists can make those.
Yeah.
One site that I constantly champion is Bandcamp, because Bandcamp gives 80% of whatever we pay for the artist's music to the artist.
Yeah.
That's a great way of making sure there's a future for them, and that they continue to have a reason to create great art. And, you know, for studios like ours to have a reason to bring them in and put a microphone in front of them.
Yeah. So before I ask the last question, was there anything else that you want to mention or talk about?
No, but I do say to anybody who loves music, there's some incredible stories in history about music that goes back, you know, to when stories were captured and film was made or recordings were made, that helps tell the story of how we got here. And I'm not somebody that likes to, I always use the phrase, the saddest thing in life is a shelf full of dusty trophies. And I try and say that to artists because I want them to stop looking at what they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever, and look at what they're going to do now and in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But there is a repeating pattern that is in music, and those stories are amazing stories that tell of the struggle of the artist and the overcoming of fear and difficulty that got them to the point of making that recording, which we enjoy and don't really question it. And I think there's a lot to be said in looking back in history and seeing those stories. I mean, I think they're wonderful, and they give a folkloric nature to what we do.
Okay, so our last question is, what is the soundtrack of your life?
It's yet to be recorded.
Ooh.
Because everything I've done in the past is just a statement of who I was, where I was, and who I was with at a point in time. Albums are like photographs in that they capture a moment. And I've been so lucky to have a wonderful history of capturing moments with artists. But the moment, the soundtrack of my life is the moment not yet captured. So that's what I'm looking forward to, the future. What's going to come into these walls and that we will capture that makes a real difference. There are 8 billion people on this planet, and 60% of them have access to the internet. And probably that's growing all the time. And for us to be able to affect them in a meaningful way it's an honor, and it's a responsibility that we have, and we don't take it lightly. And that will be the soundtrack of our lives.
Okay. So for all our listeners who want to stay updated on you and your studio, where can they find you?
We have a great website at troubledclef.com, and that's where we typically show what we're doing, what the studio is about. We are in the center of Mexico. We are a destination. People come here because they want to escape the stress and chaos and economics of a lot of the Western world, which we don't have a lot of here in Mexico. And it's a beautiful place to bring your idea and turn it into the greatest creation that you ever make. And we're here to shepherd that process, and we'll gladly do it. And if they want to find out more, go to troubledclef.com. And hit me up there. That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a nice rest of your day.
You too.